So, hi everyone. Thank you for attending this presentation. This presentation will be about how machine learning can help you achieve your business objectives. My name is Cyril. I'm ML pre-sales lead for Data Team G Cloud. And I will be giving you this small presentation about what we call the Data plus AI framework. And so let's dive right into it. So the first thing I will speak about is the Data plus AI framework. It's basically a way to do data and AI, but the way we do it is by combining them. And then I will speak also about the Vertex Ai, which is a product suite from Google, which helps you do everything related to machine learning inside of Google Cloud. So let's dive into the Data plus AI framework. So first, let's start with some numbers about artificial intelligence and the adoption that we have at clients. So 27% of companies report that at least 5% of their EBIT is attributable to AI. We also have that 91% of leading businesses that have ongoing investments in AI, and 91.7% of them are actually growing those investments more and more each year. And we also have that 62% of consumers are willing to submit their data to AI to have better experiences with products or services. So first, let me speak about how we do Data plus AI inside of Data Team G Cloud. It's actually a slide that we use to present our way of working. So the first thing when you want to introduce a data project or AI project inside of Data Team G Cloud, well, inside of your organization, thanks to Data Team G Cloud, what we first need to do is to get your data house in order. That is the most critical operation that we need to perform, just because if you want to have data that makes sense for an ML project, well, it's usually what we call garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't have your data that is in order, then we cannot use it to make predictions. Then, of course, we need to turn data into actionable insights. That's also important because, well, it's great to have a data warehouse where all your data is properly stored, but it's actually interesting, and that's where you will receive value, is by putting actionable insights where you can actually use that data and use it to do something with it. And then we have to improve your data quality and deliver trusted data. That's also a super important topic in data engineering. Usually what it's also combined with data governance. So it's the way that you want to organize your data and organize your teams around your data to make actually your teams interconnected, but also you want them to work on specific sets of data. And then, of course, drive the adoption within your business. That's actually another broad topic that we have, is that some customers, we implement a data warehouse project, and when we actually deliver that project, they do realize that a dashboard that we've been providing them is not consistent with the dashboard that they used to have. And so adoption is quite hard for some customers because they are a bit lost. And also, well, when you're trying to provide insights to a business person and they actually receive that dashboard, they're very convinced to know their own business. Well, of course, because they've been working for so many years in that specific domain, and then we bring that solution. And so it's quite hard to get people to adopt the technology, and that's also part of our role as data and ML engineers, is to provide accurate and reliable insights and to try to convince the people that the actions and the insights and all the predictions that we'll make actually make sense for their business. And then the last point is to empower your organization with an efficient data operating model at scale. Is basically the way that you want your data to be consistent and modeled around different areas. And so here is a list of tools that we usually use for all those steps in a data project. The most important one, at least to me, is the upper right corner, where you have actually Vertex Ai, which is, as I said earlier, the product suite from Google Cloud that we use to do everything related to ML, so from data gathering to making predictions and deploying model and monitoring them. But of course, if you're more into data, you might be also interested in some of the other products that you may have already seen at other presentations, but that will not be covered in this presentation. So what is actually interesting for us is that we realized at customers that we have is that building data pipelines is great, but it's not sufficient. Why it's not sufficient? Because we don't deliver value. And so what we are trying to push for now is well, we used to do data and AI. Now we are targeting to do data plus AI. The way that we envision it is that if you just have your data and you have your AI, well, there's no interconnection between the two. And so the way that we want to try to progress now is by combining the data and the AI part so that we are better at serving and at improving your predictions so that you have a better return on investment quicker and in a better way. So the way that we usually do it is we will do a data plus AI capabilities review. How does that work? Well, usually we just sit there with some ML engineers, with some data engineers, and on your side we'll have more technical people that are really hands-on their database or whatever they maintain. We also have some business stakeholders that know, well, what needs to be done to improve the business value out of their actual business and activities that they do. And also discuss with some business leaders so that we can discuss on their key KPIs and what really is their vision so that we, with data and AI, we can help them provide to that journey inside of their KPIs. And so what we do is that data plus AI capabilities review, and then we sit together, we discuss which use cases make the most sense for their business, and then we try to rank them, and that's actually something that I will discuss later on. We try to rank them based on effort and impact. And so, of course, the more effort it takes, the less interesting it is, and the more impact it is, the more interesting it is for us. And so what we really are trying to provide there after that data plus AI capabilities review is that we are creating a full report where we believe we could have an impact with data plus AI so that your business will be impacted, and we'll try to have that roadmap of all the way that you can progress in that data plus AI journey. And so, yeah, that's exactly what I've been trying to explain to you, is that the way we used to do data projects is basically the data waterfall. What is the data waterfall? Well, basically, we have a first plan and assess phase, which is, well, we first look at what is your business, what data do you deal with, and how we can organize it. And so the second step is data cataloging and ingestion, which is basically having your data to the cloud and starting to have a data warehouse. And then we have data modeling and transformations. Is really about transforming your data into a model that makes sense. And then activation is the ML part that we are tackling to actually provide you actionable insights. And from experience, what we've seen at some customers is that the time frame that we are talking here is somewhere around month to years. And so if you're a big corporate, having all your data in order in a data warehouse actually takes time. It's a very long process with multiple steps. And so what we are trying to propose now is to have that data plus AI way, which is much more agile. And so the way that we work is first we have the plan and assess phase, which is, well, we do that data plus AI capabilities review. We start thinking about how you could have your roadmap to data plus AI. And then we really work into use case per use case, and that allows us to provide business value much quicker. Why? Just because we focus on a much more narrow scope, and then with that scope, we already have business value, and then we can iterate. One way that you can also see it is that, well, all the steps are actually phased differently, which means that in the plan and assess phase, you won't have the same persons that you have in data cataloging and ingestions, which would usually be business analysts. Then you have data modeling and transformation, which would be handled by data engineers. And then we have activations, which we can do with ML engineers or BI engineers. And so that way of delivering new projects and tackling new use cases is actually by parallelizing all the different steps that you have in your data plus AI journey. And so it's really by combining the two that you can have value out of it. And so, well, how's the way that we usually work? I've already explained this a bit. First, on the left, we have the Data plus AI capabilities review, which is really we sit down together and we discuss about your business and how we can make impact and plan all of this. And then on the left is basically having a proof of concept, which is we try to tackle that first use case. We deliver business value in quite a short time frame, which is usually in a matter of weeks or sometimes months, depending on the complexity of the use case, of course. Then implementation, and we repeat for other use cases, and we go over again. And so that's exactly what I've discussed before. When we try to tackle projects, we will first classify them into impact and effort. And so on the top left, you can see the quick wins, which is high impact, low effort, of course. Then strategic goals, which are high impact and high effort. So they're worth spending the time because they do have a high impact, but the effort that you need to make to implement that project inside of production would be high. So it's more inside of the strategic goals. Then we have the nice to haves, which are low impact, low effort. It's, well, nice to have, basically. And then the backlog, which are the high efforts and low impact. Well, basically, you don't want to tackle them right away because they don't provide any value and they're high effort. And so I actually prepared some papers that you can use if you want to complete the matrix with your use case and your business. We'll actually have the opportunity to discuss at the end of this session, at the coffee break, I think. I have some engineers in the room that will be speaking to you if you have some business cases that you want to write down so that we can discuss it on a one-on-one. It would be interesting to maybe have that conversation starter. So yeah, if you can pass the papers, that would be very nice. Thank you. And so that brings me to the second part of this presentation, which is a deep dive inside of Vertex AI. That part will be more technical, but not super duper deep technical, because this presentation is more a high-level overview. So as I've explained previously, Vertex AI is a product suite from Google Cloud that helps you doing everything that you need to do and want to do with ML. So from data labeling to production deployment to monitoring, you can do all of this inside of the same tool, which is Vertex AI. And so I will try to give you a glimpse of all the capabilities that Vertex AI has for you. And so, yeah, as I've explained, Vertex AI, you can apply it for all types of data, which could be visual images, conversational language, structured data, tabular data, numerical data. All of this can be tackled with Vertex AI. Well, of course, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do ML. And so it brings you with different features that are actually interesting for most of the technical people here. We can do Jupyter notebooks. We have AutoML, which allows you to bring machine learning, but just by the click of a button. So you don't actually have to configure a full machine learning model. You just have to bring your data. Then Google will try to create the best model out of it for you, and then you just have that model that is being served for you. Then we have some stuff just like explainable AI. We can train with training pipelines. We have predictions. We have feature store, which allows you to track all of your features that you need inside of your models. But I will go over some of these in the following presentation. So, as I said, Vertex AI really allows you to tackle all of your ML projects from start to finish. So, as you can see in that slide, Vertex AI, you can use it to ingest your data, then you can analyze it with notebooks, then you can transform it, you can pre-process it, then you can train model, which could be either from your custom models or with AutoML, so you don't have to do anything. Then with tracking, we have what is called models registry. So when you deploy a model, it is automatically monitored by Google Cloud, so you actually don't have to configure anything, or really a few of it. Then we have what we call evaluation. Evaluation, again, is a tool from Google Cloud, which allows you to monitor the performance of your model inside of production. And so if you have anything that comes with data drift, so if your data is changing over time, or if the behavior of your customers is changing over time, Google Cloud can automatically detect that and trigger a warning for you to tell you that you may need to retrain your model. And then deploying, that is done with endpoints. Well, basically endpoints is a way to deploy your model and having it as a REST API, so you can just access it by doing REST calls, which is basically super easy for most of us, I think. And so what is Vertex Pipelines? Vertex Pipelines is the way that Vertex AI works. So it works with pipelines which are directed as cyclic graphs. Vertex Pipelines is a bit complex, but if you break it down, it can actually be quite simple. Vertex Pipelines work with container registry. So you have containers, and those containers are actually do contain all the code that you need to run your ML models. And basically, Google Cloud comes with pre-compiled containers that you don't have to worry about if you don't want to configure your own containers, which is, of course, desirable in most cases because you don't want to get into the complex stuff if you just get started with ML. And then you have that Vertex Pipelines, which can do everything from start to finish, so ingestion to model deployment and monitoring. And then you have all types of tools that you can use to analyze your data with BigQuery. You have also Vertex Training, which is basically the way that you want to train your models, and then pre-processing with data flow, either in real time or in batch. We also have Vertex Prediction, which is basically, as I explained before, a REST API that you can call to get the predictions out of your model, and then the artifact store, which is cloud storage. But we also have feature store, which I will explain later on in this presentation. And so if you really want to deep dive into Vertex AI, it brings you with a lot of value and lots of stuff that you could do with Vertex AI in your ML journey. So if you're interested in model transparency, user trust, or clear accountability, actually, Google Cloud provided that table with all the topics that you would maybe like to consider in your ML journey. And they actually provided solutions for all of those problems. So if you're interested in the translation of the problems and the solutions that they provided, it's all available there. And so now let's take a concrete example. And that concrete example is an example of structured data, which is actually tabular data. So that small example is really direct in the sense that it does not use much products from Google Cloud. Basically, you have your data that comes in Google Cloud Storage, which you can see on the left. And then that data, we will ingest it inside of BigQuery, which you can see in the define your data schema and target. The nice thing with BigQuery is that when you bring new data in, it will automatically detect the schema of your data. And so you don't really need to worry about it. But if you have a complex schema, sometimes you have to configure a bit here and there. But it's actually not complex if you've never done it. Then there's a possibility to use Dataflow. Dataflow is a data processing framework from Google. Again, I explained it a bit before. You can use it either for streaming data or batch inference. Basically, either you want to do your predictions in streaming or offline. And then you can actually analyze your data with notebooks. That's, again, a Vertex Ai product. What is notebooks? If you're familiar with Jupyter notebooks, it's basically the same, but in that way, well, in Vertex AI it's shared, so you can actually collaborate with your peers directly inside of Vertex AI notebooks. And then we have the training and evaluation, which can be done inside of Vertex training, which I'm not sure I will deep dive later, but it's actually interesting to see how it works and when a full pipeline runs. So we'll maybe see that later. And then we have deploy, which again uses Vertex prediction. Vertex prediction allows you to have your models that are being monitored in real time by Google, and you receive alerts if something goes wrong. And so again, we can use Vertex training. What's the nice thing about Vertex training is that it's a serverless experience. And so what means serverless? Basically, it means that you don't have to worry about anything. Google Cloud handles all the management of all the machines that are running your services and your trainings for you. So you don't have to configure machines. It's really about having your code up and ready. And when it's up and ready, you just push it to Vertex AI, and Vertex AI runs your pipeline end-to-end, and you don't have to worry about anything. Fully managed pipelines, again, what's the nice thing about it? They do have tons of arguments, which is they are compatible with multiple languages. The most usable one is Python, just because you usually do Python for ML. It's scalable just because you don't have to manage your own machines. If your code is running like a big machine learning model, you don't have to worry about the number of machines that you will put behind of your project. That is also something that Google Cloud can automatically scale for you. Cost effective, of course, because you don't have to spin those machines up and down yourself. Basically, you only pay for what you use. And then you can also track your metadata of your pipelines, and of course, it's secure. So now a bit deep dive into Feature Store. Feature Store is the part of Vertex AI that allows you to store all of the features of your models. So if your models need to use something to make the predictions, for example, users or information about certain products in your business case, that's where you would like to store it. Why would you use Feature Store and not any type of database? Well, just because Feature Store has been tightly integrated inside of Vertex AI. And so actually getting getting the information and getting the artifacts from Feature Store is actually super quick because they have what they call the, I think, auth prediction or auth, basically getting your data in a super fast way. And so, well, basically, you can serve your ML features at scale with low latency, thanks to Feature Store. And as you can see on that screen, you can also get insights on your data that you may not know beforehand just by looking at the interface of Feature Store. So in that case, we have some distributions that are shown there about your features, basically. Of course, we also have something that is super interesting if you're developing ML models, which is experiment tracking. So if you're doing anything related to hyperparameter tuning, what is hyperparameter tuning? It's basically when you have an ML model and you want to optimize it for a very specific use case, and that's something that we do often in ML projects. We want to have the best set of parameters in a model to answer the business problem of that particular client. And so what we would do is hyperparameter tuning. Hyperparameter tuning allows us to find the best parameters for a given problem. And in that case, you can see the interface of Vertex Ai experiments. And Vertex Ai experiments basically shows you all the experiments it has done for you with the different sets of parameters. And it will also show you the different performance it linked to. And so basically, you would be able to have a deeper understanding of the model you're developing for the specific set of data for your business case. And in that case, well, you can just skim through the different models it has created for you and select the best one because, of course, you would like the best one. As I told you before, we also have monitoring that is completely automatic with Vertex Ai. So when you deploy a model, the monitorability is also comes out of the box. So it means that when you deploy a model, you can have all sorts of graph about the number of requests you have per second, the number of machines that are being used, the number of failed recommendations that are made, because that's also something that you would like to keep track of it. But you can also track, and that is maybe not showed in that small screen capture, is that you can actually have explainability, and explainability allows you to get data drift. What is data drift? As explained before, data drift is when your user's behavior is changing, and so you would like to know when your model needs to be retrained just to answer better the new data that comes in inside of your model. Then ML metadata is basically the same as a feature store, but for metadata of your pipeline. This one is not that interesting if for a business perspective, just because it's just something that is back office. And then that's the way that we work. Basically, we use a version control system with different components, and those components are actually containers. And then we have the pipeline definitions. The pipeline definitions are JSON files that describe the entire flow of the pipeline, and we actually store them in cloud storage. And then when we combine the two, we can actually reuse those components and those pipelines to make new flows for new customers. And so everything is reusable, and we can try to make generic components and generic pipelines. I will not deep dive into that slide. Basically, it shows you that Vertex Ai is pulling all the components from container registry to run the different components. And we also have the pipeline definition in the JSON file on the left. And all of this allows you to run new ML models. And that is basically it for my presentation. Maybe do you have some questions before we go for a coffee break and maybe discuss together? No question? No? Perfect. Then I'll wrap up here. And thank you a lot for attending this presentation, and have a nice coffee break.